biohacking, performance, mastery, mindset, holistic health. This is a show about getting better every single day. I'm on a mission, guys, to help over 1 million people get healthy and lose weight. Why? Because when you lose weight and get healthy, you have higher self-esteem. You have more self-confidence. And that person goes out and crushes their goal and starts living the highest version of themselves, and then they have way more impact on the world. All right, let's go. I'm fired up. Kristen
Did
Weitzel.
You see me dancing?
I saw you dancing backstage. I was pumped. You had me dancing. I always get jazzed with my little snazzy intro. So thanks.
It's great. It's really great.
Yeah, my brother does a lot of my producing, and he takes a lot of my videos and puts it together. He's like a video magician, and he kind of came up with the music and stuff. So yeah, thanks.
I love it.
Well, here we are live with Kristin Weitzel. Did I say that right? I had it said it backstage, right? How did I not?
It's like Weitzel. Weitzel. Like
yeah.
People say Weitzel all the time because of Weitzel's pretzels, which
that is correct.
That's what people say all the time.
Weitzel. I had it. It's funny because I asked you backstage. I'm like, Weitzel, right? And you're like, yeah. So I said it right. But now when I'm live, I just lose my words. Anyways, founder of the Warrior Woman Mode and Sherpa Breath and Cold, and also the host of the Well Power podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you. And there's like slow and sweet progression of our friendship, like layering from social media to real world to next to next to next. And so this is a culmination. And I made sure you mentioned my podcast because, I'm going to go into Well Power podcast with Joel in the very near future and just unpeel all of his deep and dark secrets.
You know me, I'm an open book. People always like, can you ask you this? I'm like, sure, why not? I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? I want to, ask me whatever you want. Yeah, I'm excited to have you. The more it's been funny. I've followed you for a long time now, and then I just bumped into you at the Biohacking Congress event in Vegas, and you're like, "Hey, we should get on a podcast." I'm like, "Yeah, we should get on a podcast." So this is great. And the more I learn about you, I'm like, "Man, you're really a badass." So I'm curious though, for people that don't know you, like I'm always curious about people's like kind of hero story and like their journey to getting here, and like. We don't need to know maybe when I was 2 years old, but really, like when you think about, I'm always fascinated with my own life. Like, man, like I never would have thought this, right? So like on your journey to like health and like doing what you do now, and I mean, just empowering men and women, like how did you get here?
Yeah, I think like the origin story, it's long and I won't be long or long-winded, which is not my MO normally, but I grew up a dancer. I really wanted to figure out the piece of like, how could I eat? Because I loved food and still keep a dancer's physique. And I didn't really understand how that worked. But I started when I was 5. So that didn't make sense to me. But I did see a lot of disordered eating in that world, ballet and all. You see a lot of that. Thankfully, less so now. And more shapely ballerinas, primas and all that. But I navigated through food initially, I think, tried all these crazy in a beautiful way diets, some things that maybe we've debunked now, and had some big wins and big fails as you do, and learned a lot along the way. And that sort of led me into a mix of Younger's book on clean, which was really about, how do you eat things from the clean part of the world of food, non-packaged, as well as how do you reduce your food intake for a temporary period of time, not like fasting per se, but kind of mimicking some of that, and doing like a 1 meal a day plus liquids like protein and veggies and things like that. And that was like the uptick to me going, oh, damn, there's some energy in there that I didn't know I could have, right? This aha moment you see people have when they maybe switch to keto or paleo or carnivore, depending on what their physiology needs, and then clearing out some of the gunk and detox and being like, oh shit, this is the next level me. And so I felt that. And so that was like enough of an anchor to hold on to. And I started falling in love in a number of ways. I had a partner in my life, and he was a very nerdy researcher. He did a lot of researching while I was off at the office because he worked at home. We fell in love with Mark Sisson and then Dave Asprey, and then all these, at the time people were like, who are these kooky guys that are like proliferating the myth at that time, or this like scary thing that's going to kill you. And so eating paleo, eating primal, navigating that space, trying to understand what ketogenic dieting was about, falling in love with biohacking, vis-a-vis Dave had a lot of that quirky tech. And we just started trying crazy things together. It's really helps forget that he was my lover, my partner, my boyfriend, all of that. But it's nice to do things in community or connect with connectivity and discover together. And I think that we both had that itch. And so it really, it became health in a healthy way, a little like competitive, cool, what could we figure out? And it was also awesome that I had a nerd at home that I'd come home from work at night and he'd be like, Cliff Notes version of the entire ketogenic, arena. And I'd be like, yeah, 30 minutes, tell me everything. And if I didn't understand something, he'd really have such a real good grasp. Princeton educated guy, researcher, tech guy,
Wow.
really had a grasp of it. And so I had, he's 5 minutes ahead of me on the path in some cases, but it was just a really efficient way for me to take in information.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. And I'm curious because when I hear your story, I'm like, yeah, that's some of the same things that happened to me. It's like, and for good or bad, and I've heard you say this on other podcasts too. It's like, biohacking has such a bad connotation, and I know what you mean. It's like, it's the good and the bad, and it's a love-hate relationship for me too. But, and I know you really, what I love though, is like, you're like, no, let's talk about it and let's make it positive. But I've gone through all those trends too, and just falling in love with bodybuilding when I was 18. And then you just learning like, oh, I need to eat more protein. I need to do this. And then following the paleo diet. I've done the paleo, I've done keto, I've done bulletproof. There's carnivore now. There's all these things. I'm curious, like, as you progress and all that you've learned, where are you at now? Like, what do you think? And the reason I ask is because I was lucky enough to have Rob Wolf on the podcast, who anybody knows him knows he was like one of the founders of, he wasn't the founder, but he really pioneered the paleo diet and made it popular. And I asked him that question because I'm like, man, you've gone from paleo to keto to carnivore, maybe just kind of this balance. And he even said, he's like, I'll tell you something, Joel. He's like, I am in the minority here, but I think fasting is complete bullshit. And all the things that people are talking about, this longevity hack, they're completely wrong. I think 20 years from now, we're going to find out it was a complete joke from what people are saying specifically. So I'm curious, maybe that won't be your answer, but I'm just curious, like, where are you at now with all the keto, the carnivore, what do you do personally?
Yeah, for sure. Bioindividuality is like the rockin' trigger word right now. Let's not say trigger word, on trend word maybe, or it's going to be. Bioindividuality is really important to take in consideration for your physiology. You say this, you talk about this a lot as well. I also want to backtrack for 1 second and just say, everyone always forgets Stephen Gundry, who was like in the midst of all that. And this is a great lesson, right? Stephen Gundry was like doing a lot of this primal, talking about the primal, what became primal in paleo. He's sort of the let's say he's the grandfather if Sisson was the godfather or something like that, right? And let's also give Sisson credit because that guy hammered piles of research and then summarized for us in the most beautiful way for years to become successful in the way that he did and game changed dressing and sauces and
He
anyway,
totally did, man.
I love Mark. He's great.
Yeah.
But Gundry, like, this is a really great lesson in the Gundry story where I saw Gundry 10 years ago speak on a cruise ship, and he actually was like, yo, like Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke, I can't remember. It was the hardest thing that was like my last give up. Because he used to be like on the Splenda train or the NutraSweet train. Because, we don't always know. We're trying to navigate maybe sugar, hardcore cane sugar is not the best, but we're going to use something that's like stevia. And is that good? And then, and
agave nectar. Remember that? The paleo crowd loved agave nectar. So it was so healthy.
Remember that. People are putting fucking agave nectar in everything right now. And I'm like, cool. Carbohydrates are not the devil and still sugar. And makes me gassy, so I don't need it. The TMI, but the Gundry story is so great because he was like, I said to people who are trying to get on a healthy train, who are deconditioned and in maybe dis-ease states, like, do what you need to do. Here's the way you need to be eating wholly and cleanly, and diet soda is fine. Like, it's totally great. I drink it. Like, that was his vibe. Now I'm going back some years, but what he was doing was titrating, and unbeknownst to him in some way, right? The chemicals were like cancer, there's bad shit in soda. We get it.
Yes.
But like, he was also creating a map where people were the number one thing that nobody is talking about enough. I can tell you that if you eat a can of tuna fish, four oysters, 2 Brazil nuts, and 16 gallons of water a day for the rest of your life, you'll get every single one of your goals. I mean, every dream, every weight, every career, every financial success. Yeah. And it only works if you adhere. If you don't adhere, the minute you don't adhere, it's gone. And so we have to talk about adherence in this conversation in a little way. And I think the Gundry story is really interesting because adherence is everything. And so even if those people were having diet soda, they were having massive success. Now, yes, they're still putting chemicals in their body in some way, but the rest of their life, the other 90%, 80% plus, was cleaned up. And so the point is, like, we don't always have to be so diehard and absolutist on everything. And that leads me to what the answer is to your real question, which is, what do I do and why do we do it? And what should other people do? Maybe that's the road you're going down.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, where do you stand on, or like, and I think, the whole fasting thing, and you mentioned it even with the total clean, and you kind of mentioned like, yeah, there's times probably to do it, and there's times not to. But I think what I love too is I think we're both passionate about health, and yeah, sometimes I go to the extreme and I go all in on these things, and I don't mind it because at the end of the day, where I'm at now and the knowledge I have, I'm just very balanced. Like, I'm with you. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not like keto. I'm not carnivore. I like them all. Like, and maybe do them all every now and then. But do I think you need to be that way all the time? Probably not. Honestly, probably not. I think I don't think that's the answer. But I mean, I'm happy for the people that get the results. But yeah, I'm just curious, like where have you gone? I mean, and just hearing Rob Wolf say about the whole fasting, I mean, I was like, wow, okay.
I mean, I tried
maybe I'll give up fasting.
a lot. Yeah. I mean, I've tried a lot of these things. Most of these things I want to say, I have not been I've not been a fruitarian, and I have not done. There's like a diet that's like you just only breathe air, which sounds amazing. But I don't have any interest in trying that. No offense to the airtarians or breatharians. And there are some things that I'm just not willing to do. But for the most part, I cycle most of the way that I'm dieting. I hate that word. Lifestyle eating choices are cycled. Either around my cycle, depending on what's going on. I'm a little bit hormonally dysregulated right now. But when my hormones are aligned well, and the women I work with come to me with either dysregulation or regulation, and we work around their cycle if they're in their reproductive years. And if they're in their perimenopausal years, we play in that arena a bit. In menopausal years, we do it a little bit more systematically. But I did paleo for 8 years straight. I'd say 90-10. So I was really on board of paleo, I think, because I was a vegetarian for a while. And I was sort of like when I was like 18, I was like, my best friend was an animal rights activist. Became a vegetarian. I was like a pizza and French fry vegetarian. So it's like not the way to do it. And also my body, my DNA, makeup, everything, a lot of the lab work, the test, don't guess model for me is I seem to respond really well to a moderate plus protein diet. I say that because a lot of people talk about my coaching as high protein. It's just because everybody's eating way too little protein.
Rob Wolf said the same thing, by the way. So kudos.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I buy that strongly. When we get into fasting, I'm more averse to. I'm moderate for fasting for females in a way, especially if we're trying to conceive, especially if we are in our reproductive years, the prime of our reproductive years. And that's only because there is a little bit of, in what I see in the marketplace, and consumers and clients and people showing up to me in the world, that they're like, hardcore fast, and it's like, I'm going to do a 5-hour window. I'm going to do it. And like that 18-6 model, which was born for men from literature and people's theories and opinions. And that's cool. And I think I typically put women on easier fasts and I think if you're going to do that 18-6 model, like maybe it's an every other day thing. You can just regulate your hormones a little bit. Like we do get some benefit from it, but yeah, there's a lot of hardcore fasting in the world. I think I'm less worried about it as women enter menopause and the hormones are a bit more, let's call it regulated or just even day to day. And the real thing is that, this is all to say that I'm not anti a long-term fast. I've seen some good benefits. I know, and specifically with like clients with medical conditions, really just giving the body a chance to rest. Like we always talk about this like prehistoric era of our ancestors and how they behaved in the cave. But like there is something to be said for us having a water fast for, during the season when we couldn't catch animals as adeptly and all of that. Yeah. So, I think the answer, like any good answer, it depends. And also,
sure.
Really,
but I like that you said it too. You cycle, and that's important. So you'll go in and out. You might go low, and then you might come back and have some feeds. Feasting and famine. So I like that. That's
great. And I cycle mostly between like paleo and keto. And if I really talk about it, like I haven't done a lot of keto since I've been in Texas because I tend to have relatively low carb lifestyle in general. And I think keto puts me in a quick, if I'm trying to produce ketones and just jack through some stuff and like keep my metabolic flexibility, yes. And I could tend to like, I will go right to the, I'll go overboard quickly. That's just my personality. It's like all in, can't do half measures. And then I'm like I'm overdoing the keto too long. And I'm working personally on my hormone profile. So for me, I'm just being cautious with that.
Yeah.
And also, you talk about this too. People go from McDonald's and not good diet to keto because they feel like, let me do that. And it's like this braking of the car from 80 miles an hour. It doesn't work,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I wanted to talk to you also about, hormones and how women should in general work out. You have a great background in your weightlifting and like CrossFit and ARX and all that you do. And yeah, so what have you been seeing that, makes sense in general for women and their cycle and working out?
Yeah, this is a passion point of mine, and it goes hand in hand with that protein conversation we just had, which is so I cannot stress the importance for women of proteins. And what I'm really stressing is amino acids and getting them into women's bodies. Partly because when we eat proteins and the way they cycle in our body, amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, eat whatever protein you want. Just know that animal protein is going to have less calories than plant protein and be more bioavailable. Not my choice. Don't be mad at me. In the literature, go and read it. This is, I'm just saying that generally for the people who are listening, because,
She
the
used to be a vegetarian, everybody. It's okay.
I was a vegetarian for a little while. I didn't do it
Yeah.
well, and it didn't work for me, and that's okay. And I think if you believe in animal rights, there's ways to do this really well without ever eating an animal, and that's cool. The protein piece is so important because it's about repair, because it's about it's like you can't out train a bad diet. Go out and have a piece of cake to celebrate on your birthday. That's cool. There's joy and oxytocin and sharing, and maybe make it a homemade cake instead of some crappy thing from the store. Cool. But to me, like the worst diet that you can have is one that's like too low on, an unbalanced macronutrient profile, or too low on protein. And specifically, I say that for women because amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, are something that cycle through all of our bodies, men and women, every 6 hours. And if they're not going to be utilized to repair muscle, then they're going to go into the next phase of what they need to be used for. So, you start to get into like an athlete conversation when you're really timing your protein perfectly. But that being said, it's important for us to get enough protein. I try to make it easy on women and say, look, how many pounds of body weight do you have? 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of body weight. If we're going to do easy math, that's my strong recommendation. I do variances off of that when I have private clients for various different contextual reasons.
Yeah.
We actually need more protein as we age as women. And part of this timing of the protein after the workout and all of the things is like based on where leucine has to hit for us. Like you're a man, so leucine can hit your muscles to start the recovery process. We need it to get to our brain. It's like a different physiology in women. Stacy Sims has all the juice on that with the research she's pulled, and getting our leucine, high enough that it's activating our recovery or activating our muscle protein synthesis in the body as women. So food first, then we'll talk about training, and really protein first, because if you're not putting the protein in, you're not going to get this muscle protein synthesis, which is going to heal your muscles and grow them. And ladies out there listening to you right now might be like, why do I want to grow my muscles? I don't want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we still have that in the world, right? And I just got to say, like, you have to be so adhered to a food plan and a 2 to 3 hour a day workout plan that's meticulously periodized, and not even like for a man, but periodized for a woman to get you there to like competition stage ready.
Yeah.
That you would know what you were doing intentionally. There's no way you're going to be like, oh, damn, I'm huge. What happened? I'm super shredded and really tan. Like it's not just going to happen. So,
I love that you said that, because women are always like, well, I don't want to get big, Joel. And I'm like, yeah, you don't worry. You're not, like you said, you would have to be in this really like competitive style. But I'm like, if you want to get toned, you have to lift weights.
yeah.
And don't worry, you won't get big.
And if you want to get small, which I fucking hate, I'm going to say with an F-bomb there, because let's stop making ourselves smaller, women. If you want to get strong and you want to fit into your clothes and feel really good, you have to put on muscle. That is the only way. And here's the other thing. It's like, I hope that you and I keep banging the drum to women about we're not going to get bigger until they listen. And this is not a slight. It's like we've been socialized to believe that, right? It's like
Totally.
a misnomer, like it's misguidance. But here's the thing. You can go. I said this to a client earlier today and was like, you want to lose all your 35 pounds in 2 months instead of a year? I work with women, private clients, women for over all their wellness, all their wellness, all their optimization over the course of a year. And in that year, we make so many strides. But what's the biggest thing they come to me with is the same thing they will come to you with, which is weight loss. And it's never really weight loss. It's just fat loss. So we have to first talk about that piece. And
this is so good, by the way, because I was going to ask you what's the biggest mistake that women are making when it comes to weight loss. So I think you're about to go into it right now. Yeah,
like for sure. Like you want to lose 30 pounds. That's your goal, 35 pounds in a year. Awesome. I can make it. You want to lose it in 2 months because you don't want to work with me or you don't want to this, you don't want that. What? Cool. You want to do that? I can do that. I do that with my MMA fighter. I do that when I'm like cutting weight with someone who's like training for a marathon and like has to lose it, a climber, whatever athlete I'm working with. We can lose it in 60 days. You're going to feel like shit. It's going to come back and then some. It's not going to affect any other areas of your life. And it's a total waste of time, energy, and money. But you want to do it that way, cool. But here's the thing, women that are listening to this podcast, whether you work with me or you work with Joel, you need to get someone who understands and can work with you on your physiology. The second piece is you have to get to the gym and train the muscle and eat the foods and eat at a caloric level that makes you feel your body, not you, your body, your nervous system feel safe enough to repair itself well, coupled with sleep so you can gain muscle. So then as you get to the next phase, which is like, don't look to lose the body fat in 5 seconds. It will come depending on how big you start and all that. But the next phase, which is as you start to carefully, slowly, and with intention lose body fat, you will be losing body fat on top of a structure that is like strong bones and muscles, and you will be able to see faster this physique that you're looking for. If you just drop all the weight, you're going to see body fat loss off of less strong bones and no musculature, and that ain't sexy. So if you're shooting for sexy or you're shooting for strong, neither of those things are going to happen. So the biggest mistake I see women make, and this is part of a byproduct of our culture, is I want it yesterday. And there's got to be a pill, and there's got to be a keto, and there's got to be a, one of the reasons I'm so successful with cold plunging women is because they don't want to go in ice baths until I'm in the middle of a sentence where I say that it's the fastest body recomposition tool that I've found for losing body fat. And I haven't even finished the sentence, and they've gone from being like, I'm never getting in, to already in the bath. And so like that's just it. That's like, God, I never want to be on a soapbox. It's going to be on my tombstone, the girl who ranted and raved about women's health, but it's
no, thank God. This is what we need. We need leaders. We need people to step up and, like you said, ring the bell and say something different, because that's not what the mainstream media has said. So we need people who are getting results and can see what they're seeing with all their clients. And sometimes I think, like you said, with clients, you need to shake them a little bit. Like, no, this is what we're going to do. Like, you want to be successful. You want this, don't you?
And also, how exciting is it that every single trigger and trauma response and frustration and workaround and tool that you've cultivated your entire life, every single one will come up that you have to address during the course of the work. This is why I stopped working with people for less than a year, unless they're in like an athlete training program for a specific race or fight or whatever. I work over a year because all of your, like Jocko would be like, good news, all your shit's coming up in a year. And we can really course correct all that. And you're just going to be like mentally stronger. Your mindset's going to be solid. You're not going to look in the mirror in the morning and be like, I don't like myself. And, oh, this piece of fat. And, oh, my nose. And, oh, this wrinkle. You're just not going to do that in the way that you do right now, because women are extra hard on themselves. We're more susceptible to anxiety, depression. We have like a brain chemistry that sort of makes us take in, like if you look at Kayla Osteroff's work, our brain chemistry makes us take in the collective in a different way in our decision making. And because of that, we have, more worry, more concern, more navigating that content of rumination to be able to make a decision. And also because of our brain chemistry, we actually have a time in our cycle that is like more intuitive. It's like, what they would say, but like researchers have a different name for it, but it's just like, we can, our gut instincts are strong. And so we have to be sensitive in those times. And so we're more sensitive to all that stuff. And therefore we reflect and look at other people and look in the mirror and do all this self-judgment. I'm not saying men don't do that. I know they do, but I think in a different way. And then maybe perhaps they're better at masking it. There's a whole world of males, and it always behooves to be said, or it's important to say, when we talk about male and females on this podcast, on my podcast, it's always just really down to physiology. Like, what genetics do you show up with? I've worked and interviewed many, many different trans trainers and people who are working in the non-binary communities who are super successful and really adept at managing exogenous hormones. But I'm speaking about physiological females and males. And I hate to bucket anybody, so we're all very individual, but these things are true. And so I just want this for women, is to really be able to like continue to step in their own power that isn't around this socialized and entertainmentized physique, goal that's put out into the media all the time, that I think just it brings us shame. We're like trying to attain this thing that's not real.
Yeah. You mentioned cold, and I want to segue into that. But before I do, I wanted to ask you, because you just said something magnificent. You said, when I get them in the cold, and I tell them their why, at first they're like, I'm not going to do that. Are you crazy? And then they do. But I'm also curious, do you get a lot of that too when you say, oh, great, you want to lose 30, 35 pounds? Well, you're going to have to lift some heavy shit, or you're going to have to work out. You have to move. And they're like, but I don't have the time, or I can't do that much. What's kind of the self-talk that you tell them? Is it similar to the cold? I'm curious.
Yeah. So everything's, you can't do anything without sleep, and you can't do anything without mindset. And the older I get, the more I really, really lean into that, right? It all kind of builds back to what we feel about ourselves, how much self-love we have, how much self-worth we have. And so this mindset piece is really big. As women are getting, heavy's relative. I like to say that. What's heavy to an 80-year-old woman who's never trained in a gym before? Not just heavy in weights in that moment, but heavy in walking into a space where you might feel intimidated, is a different level of heavy than someone who's 25 and actively been going to a gym and getting on machines and free weights and dumbbells. Even if they're not lifting heavy enough, they're both heavy to those people. It's really relative.
Yeah.
So it addresses the time issue, right? The heavier you lift, the less time you can spend in the gym. That's an oversimplification. You know that.
Yeah.
But it kind of builds back to like what I find women are doing wrong. And this isn't to say that this doesn't work in some cases, but we're over cardio conditioning. And our rep schemes are like, I will do this 20-pound weight, deadlift it. That's useless in my opinion. Sorry. You know what? I used to be like, oh, my opinion is, and now I'm like, stop deadlifting 20 pounds. Like, I know that I'm giving you a number, and that may not, for some people that might still be heavy, but if you put two 20-pound dumbbells in your hands, that's 40 pounds total. You're deadlifting that. Women with the strongest part of our body, which generally speaking is our glutes and our legs, you're wasting effort. And I want to harken back to Pralipinchart, however you pronounce his name, like the Russian Olympic lifting training guy, which is just like, stop doing 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 reps for a while and start bringing your rep scheme down. By rep scheme, I just mean how many times you do the thing over and over the course of, let's say, 4 sets. So 4 times, and you're taking space in between, but that you're doing like, what's 6 to 8 feel like? What's it feel like when you can't get to 8 because it's too heavy? Now, safe and effective. Safe being the first word, that's most important. Like, make sure you have a coach, make sure someone's training you, form, make sure someone's watching you and spotting you if you're trying to pick up something new. All of that, I'm making that assumption. And lift heavy. And for my clients, I'm trying to go with them, or they're bringing their phone to the gym and saying, okay, I'm going to do the thing. And like, we're setting it up for success, or I'm going to the gym first and showing them, or they're working with somebody online. I use a lot of programs within my program to get people to adhere, because we noticed this in quarantine that we couldn't all work out together in person.
Yeah.
And the act of lifting heavy shit, the act of lifting heavy weight is the thing that is going to build muscle faster. And what does that come down to? Same thing as the cold. All these benefits are produced by hormesis, which is the adaptation to a deliberate mode of stress you put on your body. And we're not, look, you go to the gym all the time, you work out at home. I follow you. If you're not following every single one of Joel's great fitness outdoors, flex the muscles, sunshiny Instagram posts, you need to be, because he's doing all this amazing work. And the reality is that if we're just going and phoning it in, if we're going and doing something that doesn't feel heavy, that doesn't create adaptation, it doesn't really help, right?
Yeah.
And that speaks to time. So yeah, it's intimidating. Sometimes really intimidating. And part of the breaking through to standing in your own self-worth and your own power and your own capacity is I put so much weight on the bar for it to try to deadlift, I couldn't even pick the bar up. Oops, I guess I look silly for a fourth of a second until I deload and then I just, do whatever. And it's in other terms, like my CrossFit training age isn't that many years. I only got on a barbell like 4 years ago for the first time. And I mean like a barbell where I was like, what's a clean, what's a snatch look like? The first time I did a snatch, it was like in a training program for coaches where everyone had done snatches. And the guy was like, yo, get up and Kristen, do a snatch for us. And I was like, I had never done a snatch. I had my hair down, which like any woman who's done a snatch is like, it just, everything gets in the way. I was like scared. It was scary as all get out. And I like tried it and I failed in front of this group of people. And we have to do those things. We have to fail in some ways, right? I didn't get hurt. I was cautious, all the things, but we have to try to do the thing that is next level for us in order to step into that, or experiment. This is the adventure. And I want the women that work with me, I always say like, wow, good news. What's the adventure here? We get to try this new exploration. And training heavy is, I mean, it's where it is at. And when you look at osteoporosis, we look at sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting as we age, like we have to continue to train heavy. There is no time that is too late to start with your relative heavy amount. And you go to the gym and you see a man, physiological male, generalization, will see a bar loaded up with weights and be like, I got that. Even if he can't lift it, like he's going to go after it and he will overload more like before he underloads, right? Especially if his boys are around. And a woman will put on 2 5-pound plates on a 15-pound bar, a 35-pound bar and be like, that might be too heavy for me.
Right.
And this speaks to our risk aversion, right? We had to like make the babies and foster the tribe. So we're going to be a little more cautious, perhaps that's the reason. Either way, we have to stop being so nervous and we have to ask for expert advice and support and go to our communities and not be afraid to ask the person at the gym who maybe looks like they know what they're doing in a really solid way to help us. And it's not easy to do that, and men, by the way, are the biggest offenders of not unracking their weights. What is that about?
I don't know. I haven't been to the gym in many, many years. Everything I do is at home. So sorry. I can't speak on that one.
I know, it's not you. You're like, it's not me.
All right, let's talk about some cold. You're super bullish on the cold and
I am.
you even designed a program around it. So why are you so bullish on the cold? And actually I have some questions because I heard you say once that even I think and maybe I'm wrong, but so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Even at nighttime, like 5 p.m. or something, that would be a good time. And I thought, no way, like that's going to spike cortisol in a detrimental way. And that's what I was thinking. So, tell me more about the cold and why you're just such a huge fan.
Yeah, I mean, I want to address that point because it's the most exciting piece of research that's been shared, in my opinion, for me, because I tend to have high cortisol numbers. In recent times is Huberman.
Kristen, you're stressed, really? Nah.
Not even stressed. I'm just excited and intense about everything I do.
Yeah, same here. Same here. That's what
I have to do. Down regulation is my jam. Like Freddie, my partner, is always like, "Hey, down regulation evening. How are we going to take that down a notch?" He's very good about. It's probably why the partnership works. Is very good about down regulating my system and state. So it's important to balance that out. But the most important or exciting, let's just say exciting piece of research that I've heard about in recent months, Andrew Huberman, the god of Hubermans, called on his podcast and talking about how ice bath response does not spike cortisol. All the other chemicals, no spike. So that to me is like, I was like, before he finished that podcast episode, I was back in the ice. And so here's the thing. When I did this 34 days straight years ago of cold plunging, I was trying to figure out two things. What would happen to my hormones and what was just going to feel like optimized for me? What time of day, when, 34 days straight. I promised Instagram audience that I would do 30 days straight, which is why I'm down. Honestly, I don't know if I would have done 30 days straight if I hadn't made that promise to Instagram. So thank you, social media accountability. And I was doing it in a chest freezer and an ice bath with like schlepping ice 3 flights of stairs and all this stuff. It was really interesting to do that. I assumed in the beginning, like most people, like, oh, I'm going to get up in the morning, get in the ice. It's going to set my day and be incredible.
Yeah.
And I was many, many days. And what I also realized in the days that I had work and things and training people from 6 a.m. onward, and I wasn't going to get up before that, and I had to do the ice at the end of the day, that this beautiful thing occurs, which is I had better tolerance for the cold around sunset, just personally. Sometimes you can look at some of the things that are going on with women and say that, whereas like men seems to be like a little even morning and night. But that sunset ice plunge, the ice plunge isn't about down regulating you, it's the getting out. And then like 2 to 3 hours after, you have this really beautiful, like you have right away a parasympathetic rebound when you get out. And it sort of sets up the downturn for this down regulation softness into your evening. And so for someone with my personality type, for someone who had higher cortisol, for someone who was really wanting to set themselves up for successful sleep, my sleep numbers are much better when I cold plunge in the evening. The hours of like 5 to even as late as 8 p.m., doing a 3 to 5 minute ice bath is beautiful. It's a really nice way to re-regulate my nervous system for the day, draw a line between like all the really, lean in hardcore client work and maybe some of the softer work or the self-care I'm doing at night, and really to set me up for sleep, like Molly McLaughlin style. Sleep is a skill.
Yeah. Okay. Quick question too. I've always heard 3 minutes, 39 degrees. And I've heard you say the same, I think, but I've also heard you go for like 6 minutes is like very typical for you. Is that just personal and now I'm also thinking, have you tried messing with a 3 minute cold plunge versus a 6 minute cold plunge at night and noticing any difference in your numbers?
Yeah. Yeah. I've done sub 40 up to 15 minutes. Just, you're going to teach it. You got to fail it.
Yeah.
And so, here's the thing with this, right? A lot of people will continue to talk about how long, what temp, and a lot of people use their own opinion or maybe who they're coaching or whatever as their barometer. But the reality is this: you're trying to create a minimum effective dose of stress.
Right.
So minimum effective dose of stress for every physiology, for every person in every different climate in the world is going to be different. It's also going to depend on how often you plunge. I'm not a huge advocate. I am bullish on ice. I think there is no person in the world that shouldn't be doing cold and probably cold and heat contrast. Because when you look at the literature on sauna versus all-cause mortality, like it's super beneficial to our longevity. I'm a huge advocate of cold, especially for females, although I'm not an advocate for females going in every single day, especially if they have hormone dysregulation already, meaning they're amenorrheic, they're having challenges with their cycle, they're perimenopausal. I want to say trying to get pregnant, but that's not exactly. There's a lot of benefits to fertility, doing cold aligned with a good eating and all of that. But obviously, if you are pregnant, very early stages, and it was challenging to get pregnant, please don't get in the ice until your doctor says it's okay, because it's a very special experience. And, you want to take care of the child that's inside you. But the piece of cold that I saw a lot of hormonal dysregulation in my body. I tested twice during the ice bath challenge. I saw a lot of dysregulation because of the cold. So I don't advocate for it, because I think, 3 to 4 days versus 7 days a week, it's like plenty.
Yeah.
For anyone, it's plenty, and I know we're going hard and we're excited, and it's not to say you couldn't do a bunch of days in a row if you wanted to. But for women, I don't advocate it every day. On the other side of that, the number one question I get asked about ice, besides how long, from everybody, is from women, which is, can I go on the ice on my period? And the answer is yes, 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 and yes. The days I don't love to go in are the few days before my period. I feel real sensitive. I feel really temperature sensitive. I feel a little like emotional. If I'm really emotional and really like teary-eyed or crying at the Kleenex commercials on TV and I need to kind of have a reset, then I might go in the ice at that point for a short period of time. That feels like I'm in here to kind of remind myself who I am. I'm not trying to like push my longest time to just get a turnover. A turnover is like what I call, it's a coach I'm working with in Canada who runs a big program. Her name is Lisa. She's this beautiful woman who runs a program called Unbound, and she calls it the bliss, the moment of bliss, and I call it the turnover. It's like, this is just like this physiological thing that we continue to see, which is physiological shift in the body. At the same time, you have like a capacity state shift, meaning you're understanding that you couldn't do this thing, which is what you believed before you got in, and then you do it. Maybe you do it a little longer that day, and you're like, hell yeah, I just did this thing. and you start to shunt the blood to your core, you get up to your neck, your heart rate slows down, and those two things match. And it's a beautiful thing when you get adept at watching people. You can like see that change in people's eyes, where they go from kind of like a fear response to like a surrender, and then like I got this.
Yeah.
And it's that microcosm of the cold. This is like a long story right now, but this is a microcosm of those 3 minutes or those 5 minutes or this, whatever people stay in. So going back to time, it is dependent on you and the minimum effective dose of stress. Let's use the Joe Rogan example because we all know Joe Rogan. I love that Joe Rogan has a huge following and is going to say, ice is awesome. I love that Wim Hof is he's totally lifted the bar on cold exposure and therapy and immune system improvement and all these things. And yet when Joe Rogan goes in for 20 minutes and is like a massive shiver response that borders on, in my opinion, like pre-hypothermia, like it is point of diminishing returns at that point. It is not bolstering your health and well-being.
Right, right.
Could it a little? Like, yeah. And also you're effing yourself up a bit. And so I also think his platform, you know, I always say his platform is 4 million people or something. You have a responsibility to not scare people off. That's what I'm worried about. Don't scare people off from this because it looks gnarly. And then the other piece is like, if Joe Rogan called me tomorrow and said, let's go nose to nose, who can stay in the cold longest? Like I'll put myself into, you know, cryo and cold water and whatever, and just try to shred his time. But that's not coming from the right place.
Yeah.
That's coming from like the competitive, you know, dude energy that I have in the half of me that is balancing out the feminine divine goddess in me. So here's what I say. 2 minutes, great. Start with that. See how it feels. Work your way up. I want you in sub 40 Fahrenheit because I feel like you want your cold shock proteins to activate. You know, prefacing this conversation, I should have prefaced this conversation, or it's important to say that the literature is all over the place on cold. Countries and people and body types and never enough women. And is it your arm in cold only? Is it pre-training? Is it your whole body? Is it running water? Is it what degrees? Who's taking the temperature? Is it reputable? You know, Susanna Soderbergh wrote a book. It's coming out in English in September. Soderbergh Principle. She's another one who was made big in this community by Huberman. And she says, you know, 11 minutes of cold over the course of the week. So however you break that up. And, you know, she has a series on sauna and all of that as well. So it's just like the first 30 to 90 seconds is really the hardest depending on your physiology. So don't give up then. And if you're going to get out at 90 seconds because there's a very good chance you'll have the turnover. And I've seen women go from the first 30 seconds of almost panic to hitting that 60, 70 second mark and being like, oh, I could stay in here for like, let's do 5 minutes. Like it's a really big prodigal shift, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And then just lastly on the cold, I know you were saying body composition. That's something that you've seen in terms of just weight loss and fat loss. That's been one of the most effective tools that you're seeing just in your practice. Yeah. If they did nothing else,
I'm never as lean as the times that I'm regularly ice plunging and like, you know, just doing all the other things right. You can't out ice plunge a bad diet.
Right.
If you want to recomp your body, and the scientific reason is because you get in the cold for a certain amount of minutes every week. And that's going to boost brown adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue is the good fat. We need fat on our bodies, around our organs, all of that. And white fat is typically the stuff we want to lose. And so the more brown fat we make, the more mitochondrially dense it is, mitochondrially dense. The more mitochondria, the more energy we're producing, the more calories we burn, the more our body wants to lean down the white fat and keep the brown fat working. So again, a slight oversimplification.
No, I love that.
And then also, you know, like we're building on muscle, hopefully on top of that. The one time to stay away from the cold is, I'd say, look, if you're training your brains out for 35, 40 minutes on heavy weights and you're like proud to have gotten it in, don't stunt the work you've done by like running to an ice bath and getting in the cold after. Like give it a half a day, or maybe don't even cold plunge that day and cold plunge on your rest day.
Yeah. Love that. Love the balance. Yes. I couldn't agree more. I briefly wanted to just talk a little bit just about red light therapy, because I know that's another thing you mentioned, the heat and the cold, and you do both. And, you know, you just got me intrigued and associated with the Flex Beam. We were talking about that, and it's a really nifty device. I think I have it right here. And I've been using it like daily now, and it's a great little belt. And let me see the camera there. You can kind of
I
see
know
it.
mine's usually there, but I used it in bed last night. I always wrapped it up and helped me go to sleep at night. So it's not here, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a panel as well. It's not a huge panel, but it's an old Juve that I have, and but I gotta say, I really love this thing, because I'm using. I think it's just the portability and the flexibility, and I use the red light way more now than having the panel, because the panel, it's like you have to sit there, and like I can work out
Totally.
with this and do some cool stuff. So yeah, I'm just curious. Like, talk to me a little about red light and flex beam.
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with red light a while ago. As a biohacker, you tend to do that. I have a panel here as well. It's great to sit in front of and work in the morning or do some meditation in front of. But the flex beam, I was using it for a couple of years, and really just the big benefits for me a bit was sleep, because it helps calm me at night before I go to bed. Because again, I have that like intense energy I'm like typically down regulating from, but also I'm into anything that is going to potentiate my workout. I'm into anything that is going to make my work in the gym or training of any kind more efficient and effective. And so, being able to like strap that on when I drive to the gym still sometimes, but like putting it on my shoulders, driving to the gym in the morning, especially in LA really early, like purple Jeep, big red light coming out the windows like a weirdo. But potentiating whatever part of the body I'm working, or if I know I'm going to do a full body strength training, then I'm like, strap it on my thighs, put it on my, anywhere that it's just going to work for me to potentiate, because it's boosting. Red light is going to boost mitochondrial function. It's going to warm you up for the workout. There's studies that talk about HGH production increasing, testosterone increasing. There's enough research that feels like, yes, it can support that. I potentiate my workouts with cold. There's not exactly enough research on that yet, but like we do know and we do see that we get more force potential, like more power by the right amount of cold. That's a whole big deeper dive rabbit hole conversation. I potentiate my workouts and create effective and efficient programming by training in alignment with my cycle. So periodization, not, no pun intended, nothing to do with periods, but periodization that men use can work for women. And we can periodize differently using our last week of the cycle as a deload week in a different way and see better results. There's plenty of research since the 80s around that. So anything like red light to me is a big potentiator of a workout and that capacity. Flex beam specifically is something that I can, again, it's the same thing. People can have a panel in their house. Like how often do you use your panel? And unless they're diehard, if they're busy human beings, they're like, it's collecting a little dust in the corner twice a month. Like, and that's not the game with red light. You need it, number one, frequently. You need to not let go of it. And most of the studies, if you talk to like the world's foremost researcher on red light is a woman named Sarah Turner, or one of them, Sarah Turner, photobiomodulation queen. And most of the research you see successful trials on in the right studies is about that red light being basically applied to the body. So it has a fraction of a few inches or like a millimeters away from the red light. The red light is essentially on the skin, within reason.
Yeah.
And we're standing, this is what I love, Joel. I love marketing. When I like pop on a red light companies, even I have a light path LED, large pulse panel here. It's so amazing. I love it. Even on their website, it's like a woman on the couch and she's like, oh, sexy. And there's like red light. The whole room is lit up. The panel is 10 feet away. And I'm like, inverse square law. That's not doing anything. Literally zero, like literally nothing except making your room look like a brothel. It's like, so this is, look, none of this is the problem we have as consumers and health coaches and everything, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there. And so with red light therapy, it's like, let's see what the literature says. Let's apply it to our body. Let's like, even face masks. So you can't put the flex beam on your face. Will look weird. And also you just got to be cautious. And there's specific ones made for the face. It's like, it has to be adhered to your face, or you have to, with a panel, like 4 to 6 inches max. People aren't getting close because of EMF in many cases. So it's like riding the line of comfort with that and getting close enough that it's actually stimulating your mitochondrial function and all these downstream effects that red light. There's no one in the world who's allowed to say anymore that red light is a hoax, because we know it from the sun, from wavelengths, from all the science, thousands and thousands and thousands of studies. And so it's so exciting to have something. And then portable. When was the last time you climbed into bed with your panel or on an airplane?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, like I have a Therasage sauna because
Oh, cool.
I thought about getting a larger one where like two people could fit in, but I knew myself. I'm never gonna get in it. I'm gonna be working. I'm gonna be at least the Therasage. I can be in it. I can be talking to clients. I can be doing social media. I can be multitasking, and the same thing with the flex beam. So that's what I'm really enjoying by it. I feel like it's
Yeah.
more sticky and I'm using it on a regular basis, whereas the panel I just wasn't. The panel's great. I just wasn't using it more regularly, like you said.
Yeah.
I want to kind of start wrapping some things up, but I'm just curious, like, what exciting projects are you working on right now? You got a lot.
I have a lot. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. I just interviewed Patrick McEwen, actually released that interview yesterday, who's the Oxygen Advantage guy. So I'm a huge breath is the root of life. It's the root of all the things we do. It is the one very free practice. Like you don't even have to buy ice. You don't even have to buy food. It is the one thing that you can shift your nervous system state and shift your mindset and shift your emotionality with in a relatively simple protocol. And I think that I continue to be drawn in more and more by the ways that we use breath to control our state. I am recording a breathwork album. I
Ooh,
am working with a partner that I'm still not allowed to talk about on a breath and cold type of a challenge. There's a lot of things
exciting.
in the mix that are really exciting, and the biggest thing I rolled out this year was the Sherpa breath and cold instructor training, which is, my call to action is this. I run community sessions. I run breath work. I put people in the cold. It's great. I'm one person. There's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of styles of breathing and a lot of cold plunge styles out there. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Certainly the people doing it now aren't the first. But what I try to bring to the world is instructor training for anyone from performance fitness enthusiasts, athletes, people with functional disordered breathing, body workers, clinicians, people working in plant medicine, all of that, and saying, here's this array. It's a 2-day workshop. It is a certification instructor style. And we do 2 8-hour days that are covering all of the styles of breath that are really prominent in the world, many of the styles of ice coaching. And everybody gets a palette of all the colors so that when they see the person in front of them they're working with or their own bodies in that day, in that moment, they can apply the color that's appropriate. And that's, I think what's really missing is I'm not teaching the Kristen Weitzel style. That's not what this is about. I call it Sherpa breath and cold. Sherpa is an acronym. It's also someone who carries your shit up the mountain, but who's already been there before. Doesn't mean they're necessarily an expert, except they've done it 100 times more than you. So it's just like, hey, I'm here to guide you.
Yeah.
And Sherpa is surrender, history, exposure. That means cold and heat exposure. We talk a little bit about heat. Respiration, which is the breathing component, performance, and adaptation. And so we cover all of those pieces so that you can, with a very precise and safe and effective toolkit, you can go approach a person or a class, even if you've never taught breathwork before, never put any people in cold before, as long as you can do cold yourself, right? And you can change people. You can coach people. You can teach them how to downregulate their state in the midst of all the anxiety and stress we have, because I love human beings that are working on a health journey, and I want to be able to affect millions of people just like you do. But I need other people. Call it Sherpa or don't call it Joel, whatever. Like, I want other people in the world to get
Yeah.
the Cliff Note versions. Remember all the way back to the beginning of the podcast when I said I had this partner that digested all this information and consumed it and then gave me half an hour. Well, I'm giving you 2 8-hour days of hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars worth of certifications in one weekend so that people can go out and do that. Right. And I think that's important. I think that's part of my give back to the world is like, I want to share this so that more people can get healthy. And the two ways within everything that we're all doing that I've seen that are low hanging fruit, right? Inexpensive and accessible, and people are willing to show up for, are teaching people how to breathe into better and teaching people how to use cold as a variable for a happy life.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I want to jump into some lightning round questions, but before I do, anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
No, I love you. There's plenty more conversation where this came
I'm
from.
sure we'll do a part 2. Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting to the place in my life where I'm like, We're not talking about sex enough, but let's do that on another podcast.
Okay. Awesome. I'll bring you back for maybe that'll be a new, maybe next year you'll have some new training, breath,
I
cold,
mean,
sex. Yeah.
Patrick McEwen has in his book 2 chapters on like lovemaking in breath or self-love in breath or whatever you want to say, like how to use breath to heighten your experience with a partner or in your solo lovemaking journeys.
Ooh.
And I was like really wanting to lean in and talk about it on the podcast. And he was like, I think that's for another podcast, or maybe you could do a solo episode on that.
That's awesome.
I love Patrick. He's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots to come on that, or whatever else. But no, give me the lightning round. I love it. It's going to be like all the questions I don't know you're going to ask, and
You don't know anything about this. Yep. All right. I'm curious, what do you think are some choices that you made that made you who you are today?
I mean, I finally took one of the biggest choices I made was like really in a very, very heartbroken place, picking up my entire life and moving it from the East Coast to Los Angeles. It was the hardest thing I ever did. My dad died. He was my best friend in the world. He died 60 days later. A 12-year relationship of mine with a partner I'm very close with, who's like family still, but we're not together, ended. And I was in a place that was the biggest standstill emotionally and the biggest stuckness I'd ever experienced in life. Also confronted with my own mortality. Just, you lose a parent, you start to think that way.
Yeah.
And I picked up all my things and I moved to Los Angeles. It was really scary. I'll make big moves and do scary things all the time. But that was really, I was lonely and I was confused and I was afraid and I didn't know how to share it with people. And I was like, okay, I'm going to plan the logistics to get to LA in 14 days. And then when I land there, I'll deal with my emotions. And it was that journey took, I'd say 12 to 18 months to unwind. It's also the thing that gave me the capacity to unwind any of the corporate marketing gigs I was doing in the background to keep my income while I was doing health. Yeah. And let me just say, I'm going to leap and the net will appear. And if it doesn't, I don't know, I'll wait tables and bartend like a cocktail until it does. And so that's part one. And then the second piece I want to say is letting go of any kind of stigma around plant medicine and fear around losing control and wanting to deal with parts of the other players that drive the car with me that may not be my highest self.
Yeah. And
really address them, meet them. And I think the death of my dad too still lived in there as a big trauma. And I wanted to be able to experiment and explore the plant medicine space. And so I'm getting more involved with psilocybin and journey space. And now I do some facilitation with breath and cold in those spaces. Changed me as a human being, accelerated my expansion, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, right? I love that you said that. I mean, sometimes I think it's amazing trauma or even bad stuff or things that are not going our way, right? It's really what expands us. It makes us better. We gain wisdom and experience if we choose to. And well, thank you for sharing that. What an amazing story. Wow. Yeah. I'm curious, you're obviously such a force in the health and wellness world. Like, who's someone that inspires you? Who's someone that you follow? I'm sure there's many, but
I mean, there's one woman that really shifted my life in a big way. Look, there's many, many people. And I think the irony always is that because there were so many males driving biohacking, that a lot of my mentors are men. Dan Garner in the nutrition space, Paul Burgess in the nutrition space, Mark Sisson, Gundry, all those people, really Asprey, right? They all led the charge. Casper Van der Meulen's like a big breathwork guy that was Wim Hof's right-hand man. But when I look at the women, Dr. Stacy Sims has really been banging the drum for 15, 20 years in endurance sport and research around women's health in a way that no one else has. I don't even know her, but I've been in her course. I know her work. I love her. I will sing her praises forever. I don't even know if she knows I exist, but that's fine. She's a huge inspiration to me that she's just she cuts to the meat of it. And she's smart enough to say, I formulated an opinion on this. It's beyond my own opinion. Here's literature to back it up. And we better start getting our shit together as women and as researchers in the world to understand the female physiology enough to be able to support it. And I love that about her. And then one of the people who I love in the world the most, who is a dear friend of mine, I don't get to see as much as I'd like because she's in New York, is Emily Fletcher. And she's Ziva Meditation. And she is the person that got me, after 7 years of teaching yoga and trying to meditate, and she got me enough understanding and approachable mechanisms and methods to be able to actually sit and meditate. And so for me, stillness is a huge challenge and has been. And she's just the way that she delivers the material, the fact she came off Broadway and really has some presence in a space, the way that she connects with her community, and that she is very authentic to, like, I know her, she is who she is,
Yeah.
has just been someone for me to look up to, and changed me. You know, I had a lot of anger woven through my being from divorce and whatever other stuff, you know, stories we tell ourselves, let's just call it
For
that.
sure. Yeah.
And so the anger was like the default place for me to go, even if I was like doing it in private. And a lot of it was like self-loathing. And the meditation was the only first thing, was like the gateway to healing for me. And so it's meditation is sometimes, you know, we feel like we got to be good at it. We don't have to be good at it. So Emily Fletcher is yeah, she's a pivotal person in my life.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm a big reader, and you dropped like 3 books, I think, already. I'm gonna have to go back and listen, and I'll put those all in the show notes. But yeah, any books that really had a huge impact on your life? I think you mentioned a lot of them, but I'm just curious, any like 1 to 3 that just really stood out.
Yeah, there's a few that stand out. You know, my mom always says this. My mom will mail me books from like the Oprah Book Club, and they're all fiction, and she loves reading fiction, and I like fiction, I guess. But I'm maybe you're a little like me. I love to read
Yeah.
research and like the breathing
me-
cure. Patrick McEwen, Breathing Cure. If anyone wants to know about breath, start with James Nestor's Breathe. Breath. It's like, it used to be yellow. I think he changed the color recently, but because it's a nice one. It's on audiobook. It's built in story. Like, he doesn't nerd you out in the research till you're hooked on the story. And then you're like, damn it, he's feeding me research. But it's beautiful. The trajectory of all of the work around breath. That's a great starter. And I've listened to it so many times. I will also say that one of the books that helped me get in touch with my divine feminine more is a book called The Artist's Way. And it's really been like an anchor around that piece of me. It's basically it's like a workbook meets storybook. And so you read it and you do the activities. And I had this beautiful opportunity with 12 women when I lived in Argentina. We met every Wednesday for a year and did a few pages and a worksheet within the book. And you take yourself out on a date. It teaches you how to journal. It makes you feel like you're not like super in the wooniverse, you know, and it just really lets you get in touch with yourself. So yeah. I always recommend that book. I think there are plenty of other people on the planet that love The Artist's Way, but it's a good one.
That's awesome. Last 2 questions, we'll wrap it up. Any rituals or hacks or practices that you do kind of on a regular basis?
I mean, so many, but yes, let's see what's hot right now.
So we know you do cold. We know you do red light.
Yeah. Red light, we do cold. I was trying to think of like outside of those things.
Yeah.
Rituals that I do right now. Yeah, like so right now the thing that's hot for me that keeps coming up is like breath holding technique and this like secret breathing pattern, which is like building carbon dioxide tolerance. It sounds so silly, but it's really the thing that you can spend 5 to 7 minutes on in a day and shift your cardio capacity, your ability to manage stress, everything. And it also teaches you what comes up in your panic brain, where you hold tension in your body. It's an oxygen advantage technique. They call breathe light to breathe right, easily Googleable. I call it secret breathing and do it a little differently. But some of these breath hold practices are kind of cool, and they make me sort of face my own demons. Other rituals in the morning, though, I'm a supplement whore. I have a lot of supplements. The supplement I'm super hot on right now for everything is nitric oxide. Just like I'm taking it, putting lotion on my face with it in it. I'm doing all the things with it. I'm stacking it with red light, and I'm really liking it, just the way that it makes me feel. And you don't really need much of it until you hit 40, but you know, hitting that number, so getting into that. And I have another.
I just turned 40. I just turned 40 in April, and I've been doing the NO too. I got a virus recently. I blew through the pandemic. I haven't been sick in 5 years. No problem. Nothing touched me. I felt great. And then maybe like 3 weeks ago or something, I came down with something. I don't know what it was, but I definitely was popping the NO on high dose. Well, not high dose. I was taking at least 2 a day and doing. I think that was a big contributor for helping me. I mean, I didn't get that sick, so.
Yeah,
I didn't feel good for a week, but I mean, overall, looking back, I wasn't really that sick. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm on all sorts of crazy stacks, bioregulators, and like, you know, some kind of peptide stuff. And I have one that I really want to talk about, but it's like not FDA cleared. So, biohacking and all that,
Yeah.
probably will leave that
Yeah.
until I'm done with the protocol. And if I'm
Good.
still around and
If you're
not,
still alive from the horse tranquilizer, we'll get you on
what
an
are
interview and
we
talk about
talking about?
it.
I love you, Joel. I
I
love
love
the
you
work
too.
that you're doing. I want to take a moment really right now on your podcast to honor the work that you're doing and the way that this beautiful thing that you do, which is you always add humor and light to the things that sometimes can be not easy to get up and do. Routine is hard. Like, I got to stop using that word. Routine is not the first thing I want to do when I'm celebrating on a Tuesday night, right? Creating routine. And it's the thing that saves us. And you always make routine and focus and the topics that you're covering. Even today, you in your stories, you were excited about like leptin resistance. And I just always think, I want to be able to deliver a message of leptin in a way that's like humorous and fun and sweet and light. And it's a talent that you have to educate people on this dense nerdy stuff that we look up and we learn about to share and to actually make it palatable, like pun intended,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I just love that about you. And I'm sure that that's why people are listening to this right now as well. But not many people do it with like the ease and the humor that you layer in. And that's that coupled with you being like a family man and on the go and being like handling it all. Surely there's something in the closet we don't all see, but that's fair. Like I just want
Well,
to
if you have me on your podcast, I'm sure I'll divulge all my,
all the
or
things.
you can just bypass me. You don't need me on the podcast. You can just interview my wife and you'll learn all about, all the things that you don't see on Instagram. What's
No, I
behind.
want to thank you for the work that you put in. It's inspiring. It keeps us all on the path together. And that's like, this is the end game is we can't do this alone. None of us coaches, none of the people out in the world. Everybody has their own expertise in different areas. And the more that we sort of band together and treat this like it's a universal collaboration and not a competition,
Yeah.
unless we're being like healthy competition and who can lift more in the
Sure.
gym, then like the better we all get as a collective. And I want that for the world. So thank
Love
you
that.
for bringing that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I always think too, it's like, I mean, I just think iron sharpens iron. Like, and I was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, I don't even look at anybody really as competition. I'm just doing my own thing, and so are they. And like, I couldn't be happier how successful they are and what they're doing. It's like the world's abundant. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I get into these dark paths too. I'm like, oh man, nothing's working out. This sucks, and oh, I can't believe so and so. But then once I kind of like come back down regulate. I'm like, good for that person. Like, and good for, and like, thank God. I hope they're just making tremendous impact in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they are. They're getting great results. And I'm just going to do my thing and hope, steer the course and hope that I'm putting out good energy and someone's being impacted. I think the biggest thing for me too is just, I don't know what my stuff's doing, but I just want to keep taking messy action. And I know, and you know this, that someone's going to resonate and I'm going to help somebody by doing it. And like social media, like I don't have some good health friends that are like, I'm not getting on Instagram. Screw that. I'm off of it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I see everything going on Instagram too and being banned and censored, but I've connected with some amazing people on Instagram and I've also helped change people's lives by being on Instagram. So I always think about that. If I can just change one more life or impact somebody, someone's going to impact me too. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. The podcast world as well, right? Because there are people who are going to work with us and we got programs that are highly intensive time, energy, money. And the podcasts are a really beautiful opportunity, I think, to share both these conversations and then also some information so that people who don't have access or economics around it can just get into it. And it's like been I think it's probably a big piece of your gift to the world as well. It feels like
Totally.
a good thing and for all of us to keep doing. So more of this, please.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Last but not least, where can people find you and all your good work and connect with you?
They can connect with me. Always sort of the hub seems to be this at warrior woman mode, like warrior, not warrior, woman, singular, WOMAN mode on Instagram. And I have warriorwomanmode.com. I have wellpowerpodcast.com. All of the things are intermixed and clickable. So it's easy to find me. I have an online women's program that is Women Optimizing Wellness. That is, it's my most accessible course. It's a year of hybrid online course that I put together, as well as small group coachings. Typically, like, I don't know, maybe 12 people show up live, people submit questions. We cover a lot in the course of a year. And I've even extended it to some women who've asked, like, I'm almost done. Can I get another few more months? Like, I just really want women in collective to get together to talk about, like you just said, like put your mess out there and see what happens. And so we get a chance to do that with the guidance of the modules and talking about the things that show up. Um, so yeah, so like I just always leave that out in the wind in case any woman wants to get into community and get coaching and like in a reasonable way, right? Where you're putting in time, energy, money, but it's something that's manageable and a little self-starting.
No, it's huge. It's important, and I don't. I'm gonna tell you right now, like don't downplay that. Like I know people that are in your program, and they love you, and that they, and like what you said, is being part of that tribe, being connected, and you're doing fantastic work. So thank you so much, and yeah, thanks again for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thanks so much, Joel. More to come.
Boom. All right, let me hit the